Imagine for a second, it's 2009 and you just bought the new Batman game. And as you wait for it to download, you sit in anticipation and excitement for what you're about to experience. And when the game finishes downloading, you play it and experience Batman Arkham Asylum. Now also take a second to imagine none of that happening because you couldn't afford to buy the game yourself. But today's a new day. You're able to experience it for the first time. This is Batman Arkham Asylum. But before we even get into the game, how and why was this game even created? Well, the answer to those questions are Rocksteady presented Warner Bros. With the idea for the game, with the demo. And they told them that they wanted to make an experience where you actually felt like playing Batman. And Warner Bros. Liked the idea enough, they let them go ahead with it. And well, the rest is history, honestly. A couple of game demos and one massive release later, and this game is one of the most iconic games in the superhero landscape. Which honestly, it's not hard to see why. The story and characters are supported heavily by Paul Dini, who created most, if not all, of the episodes for Batman the Animated Series, Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, Mark Hamill, the voice of Joker, and Arlene Sorkin, the voice of Harley Quinn. So needless to say, they had the story on lock. But I'm gonna be real with y'all. Since the opening cutscene of the game, I'm sitting there, red flags everywhere. Batman cruising through these streets of Gotham, slinging, whipping that Batmobile. And the whole time he's sitting there like, dang, Joker really gave up too easy. He gotta be planning something else. Then we find out that Blackgate recently had a fire. And that fire caused a lot of the inmates to be rerouted to Arkham Asylum until further notice. Now, I ain't no rocket scientist, but 2 plus 2 has always been, I see you. I'd even go as far as to argue that Batman wanted this shit to happen. Because boy, ain't no way all these things is going wrong in the surrounding, or in the background, and you just thinking, nah, I got this. Nah, boy, he wanted this shit to happen. And it's an argument that can be backed up because Batman crazy. I know Joker is, cited to be the crazy one, but Batman's crazy too. So, maybe part of him actually wanted this to happen. We'll never know. But I digress. After getting into the asylum and getting his opportunity to escape, Joker seizes the opportunity and springs his plan into action, thus causing the Caped Crusader to chase a crazed clown through the halls, walls, and streets of a haunted asylum. And as we keep going through the game, the story just gets a little bit weirder and weirder, but then starts to make more sense as we progress. You see, this was only part of the Joker's plan. His main goal was to create a serum, Titan, to turn Gotham City into, well, basically, Bane on steroids. Which is already crazy as it is, because Bane essentially takes steroids. But that's neither here nor there. Joker's main goal, have a serum to make as many of those Banes as he wants, but he wanted it better. So in order to do that, he enlisted the help of a doctor, Dr. Young, to do it for him. How he did this, you might ask? Well, he used the alias and then waved some money in her face. It's funny what a little bit of money can get you. Joker used this same shit twice in this game, though. Because not only did he trick Dr. Young, he also paid one of the security guards, Frank Bowles, under the table. And because of that, Frank Bowles got his just desserts. In order to stop Joker, we have to find and create a cure to counteract Titan. To do this, we enlist the help of a reluctant Poison Ivy who tells us how to create the cure in the first place. Unfortunately, this leads us to trudge in the sewers of the asylum and to Killer Croc's lair, where we have to grab some plant samples to then travel to the Batcave on the island. Did I mention there's a Batcave on the island? Yeah, I mean, if anyone thought that seemed out of place, you don't know Batman very well then. But yeah, create a cure. Then we have to use that cure on Poison Ivy, who had also been affected by the Titan serum, but it infected her differently. So we beat her ass, give her the cure, make our way to go fight Joker. This then leads us to have a boss fight with a Titanized Joker because he, for whatever reason, number one, wanted to shoot Jim Gordon, who, side note, earlier in the game, Frank Bowles knocked out Jim Gordon, kidnapped him basically. So then Harley Quinn has Jim Gordon as hostage. We free him, get him off the island, and somehow, after all that effort, this motherfucker ends up back on the island, hostage again. How? Explain to me how. And at one point, I argue with myself, there was that scene where the goons dressed up as GCPD. But that doesn't make sense, because if you're the commissioner, you know who works for you. And Batman would have noticed those two dudes on the boat weren't actual GCPD officers. So that doesn't work. So how the fuck did you get brought back to the island? What the fuck did they do? You out here looking like Princess Peach. I digress. Joker tried to shoot Gordon. Batman hopped in front of it. Fought off the effects of the serum. And honestly, that doesn't surprise me, seeing as how throughout the game, Batman got infected by fear toxin several times. Didn't lose his fucking mind, but went on some massive acid trips. So it doesn't surprise me that he fought off the Titan serum. And because Joker was trying to prove a point, shoots himself. Turns himself into Titan Joker. Perfectly makes sense. It's the Joker we're talking about. But anyway, we beat his ass, give him a taste of that medicine, and we save the day. Cool. The game was designed to be linear and have exploration supplement that, which is the best idea for the game, seeing as you're stuck on the island, self-contained. So there's really nowhere else for you to go. There's nothing for you to really explore. All you're here to do is stop Joker and save the city. This also helped pave the way for the later iterations of the franchise with Arkham City and Arkham Knight, seeing as how they got the story bits down, they got the gameplay, and they got the exploration down. All in a self-contained situation, which then helped them further expand and create an open world where they could get side quests, do all this extra shit. So that linear story that they created for this game was very intentional because they wanted to self-contain it, but it was important for them to get everything else down pat instead of making a giant open world game and everything sucking potentially. Very good move by Rocksteady in my opinion. While we're on the subject of gameplay, the free flow combat system was nothing that had been seen before and influenced many games after it. With a simple design, they created a very enticing and interactive fighting style. You get one button to punch, you get one button to counter. and you just dodge, with X or A, depending on whatever fucking control. You get the point. You can choose the path of button mashing, but that's not really going to reach the full potential of the combat system, seeing as you're going to miss out on countering and you're going to miss dodging objects that are thrown at you. I found at times that I had to slow down and pace myself when I was actually fighting in encounters. Because if I pressed the button too soon, then I wouldn't have had the chance to dodge or counter a punch that was coming at me, or even stop somebody from punching me before they did. So this created a bit of a mini game for me where I had to pace myself, wait for the right time to do the right thing. And sometimes it's not perfect, but it gets that right sweet spot to where you can line those combos up. And then later on, there's enhancements that you get to later create takedowns and speed up the process of knocking people down and knocking them out faster. There are also hints of Devil May Cry, but instead of letters, there's a number counter. So every time you hit someone, the counter goes up, therefore building a bigger combo. And then by the end of the encounter, the bigger the combo, the bigger experience gain you get, therefore increasing your potential to get more upgrades later on. So there was incentive to keep a bigger combo to get a bigger payoff later. The free flow combat system was in its, barest state, seeing as this is the first game in the trilogy. But just because it's in a bare state doesn't mean it's not good. In fact, I would argue in some ways it's slightly better than later iterations, only because there's less for you to do and you focus more on creating the right opportunity to counter someone and take them down. Later iterations do other things to make the combat way better, but I'll talk about those in later videos when they come up. And on the other side of the spectrum, the Predator encounters. Now, I ain't gonna hold y'all. I'm not that great at these, simply because I overthink. I sit and wait too long to think about how I'm gonna take out guys, and then when I actually try and enact my plan, it doesn't work out, or the game just decides fuck you for whatever reason. That happens sometimes. But overall, I enjoy Predator encounters because it's a nice breakup from beating dude's ass, and it reminds me of Assassin's Creed. It was also in the first iteration, so certain takedowns weren't available, such as great takedowns. This one seemed like a little bit of an oversight, but they more than made up for it with everything else they did. It just became a little frustrating when I had a clear line of sight to take a dude down from a grate, but I couldn't do it because it wasn't allowed in the game. But it is what it is. Overall, I think the gameplay complemented this game very well, seeing as they were broken up into sections and it felt like a different pace each time they were presented to you. And sometimes it just felt like, hey, I want to be stealthy right now. Let me go take a dude down. And then other times I'm like, nah, I just want to hear some bones crack. You know what I'm saying? It was a nice change of pace every time, and it didn't feel like the game was getting stale. That's something that they continue to do in the later iterations of the game and go on to actually perfect and master these things. A major weakness they do have in the game are the boss fights. They're not bad, but they could have been so much better. So if I had anything to gripe about, it's definitely the boss fights. My personal favorite in the game is probably Poison Ivy's, and there's nothing really special about it. I just happen to like it a little bit more than the others. And one more thing about the combat, the use of gadgets are very limited. For example, the gel, you couldn't really use it because it took too long to actually put it down and be effective. So you kind of just couldn't really use some of the gadgets. That's also something they perfected later on in the other games. So I'm happy that they learned from those mistakes. Not necessarily mistakes, but just oversights. In those situations like that, those are the mark of true craftsmen, where they learn from things they've done in the past to create something better in the future. Like I said earlier, the game was very linear with hints of exploration in the form of going around and really honestly just picking up the Riddler challenges and just exploring stuff. And honestly, I could really care less about the Riddler challenges. I understand that it's kind of like it itself is the side mission of the game, but I just really couldn't bring myself to go back and backtrack and find all those challenges. I couldn't do it. The exploration itself, though, is very well conducted, whereas you go look around the areas and there's nothing really major about it, once again, because you're contained on the island. But they make each building have kind of its own character. With its own character, they all had their own tone. For example, the botanical garden was very quiet versus going to the cell block. It's very loud because of all the screaming inmates, really not giving you time to think to yourself. I like these little tone shifts that create more panic in some situations and then a calm before the storm in another. The overall environment is very well conducted, seeing as they expanded heavily on the Arkham Asylum of the comic books. And honestly, I feel bad for some of these inmates because they really haven't done anything. They just need some help. Some of these people definitely deserve to be here. Don't get me wrong. But others kind of just got hoed. That's why you don't do your dirt in Gotham City, bro. The environment is also littered with jokers ranting on the intercom of the asylum, talking shit to either you as Batman, his own goons, and occasionally some of the other villains. For example, we have a back and forth with Poison Ivy after she's infected with the Titan serum herself.
When I finish with Batman, I'll be coming after you, Joker.
Will you really? Now that's gratitude, isn't it? Women, you give them presents, experimental chemicals.
These little bits from Joker make the game really feel alive and give you a bit of a comic relief. The overall theme of the game is very dark and gothic, and even though I didn't get to experience the actual game itself and how it was supposed to originally look, I still feel like they got it across, even with the Return to Arkham version. It's not a perfect one-to-one, but hey, what are you going to do with what you got? And overall, the aesthetic of it reminds me of Gotham City, seeing as Gotham is a very old city itself, so all the gargoyles everywhere and how it looks itself is very reminiscent of the city. So they very much nailed that one on the head. To summarize all this, after waiting well over a decade to play this game, it's bittersweet because this game would have been amazing to play the first time when it first came out. But seeing as it's well past its prime, the game is amazing in its own ways, but I don't see myself playing this anytime soon. Number one, because there's plenty of other games to play. And number two, because while I did enjoy it, I just enjoy the other games a lot more. No slight to Batman Arkham Asylum, but I do appreciate what it did, because without this game, I wouldn't get to experience Arkham City. So I'm very much grateful for Rocksteady for going through with this game, nailing it, and then being able to actually create the later games. So with that being said, I love this game. It's pretty cool. Don't see myself playing it anytime soon. But I will be playing other games and I will be having more reviews later on. But in the meantime, catch y'all later.